Tonight, you are going to fall asleep. You will close your eyes, drift into darkness, and stay there for 8 straight hours without waking. When you open them again, the night will be over. This feels completely normal to you. It is not. For the vast majority of human history, nobody slept like this. For thousands of years, sleep looked entirely different. Your ancestors did not consolidate their rest into one long block. They slept in 2 separate shifts, broken by 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. They called this time the watching hours. And during those hours, something happened to human consciousness that your modern brain has nearly forgotten. The first shift was what historians call first sleep. You would go to bed when darkness fell, perhaps around 8 or 9 in the evening. You would sleep for 3 to 4 hours until around midnight or 1 in the morning. Then you would wake, not because of a dream or discomfort, but because that is simply when first sleep ended. This was not insomnia. This was not a disorder. This was the expected rhythm of the night. When you woke from first sleep, you did not panic. You did not reach for your phone or turn on a light. Instead, you sat up in bed or rose and moved quietly through your home. Some people visited neighbors. Some read by candlelight or firelight. Some tended to household tasks. Many simply sat in the dark and thought. They prayed. They reflected. They let their minds wander without the competing noise of 1,000 digital distractions. Then, after an hour or 2 or 3 of this waking period, drowsiness would return. You would lie back down and second sleep would come. This sleep was often deeper and more restorative than the first shift. You would sleep for another 3 to 4 hours until sunrise or close to it, and then you would wake for the day, having completed your full night's rest in 2 distinct phases rather than one continuous block. This was not rare. This was not a privilege for the wealthy. Historical evidence shows that biphasic sleep was the dominant sleep pattern across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas for centuries. You can find references to it in diaries, household manuals, medical texts, and literature dating back to ancient times. Intriguingly, the pattern appears so consistently in so many cultures separated by vast oceans that it was almost certainly the default human sleep architecture for most of our evolutionary history. The historian Roger Ekirch spent 15 years combing through pre-industrial documents and uncovered over 400 explicit references to biphasic sleep in letters, diaries, journals, and household records from the 15th to the 18th centuries. He found these references in England, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and North America. People were not shy about it. They did not apologize for it. They simply described their nights as divided into 2 sleeps, as casually as you might describe breakfast and lunch. This was normal. This was expected. This was human. In his landmark 2005 paper, Ekirch argued that the pre-industrial world ran on biphasic sleep so thoroughly that it shaped literature, social customs, and the basic structure of family life. Intriguingly, the gap between first and second sleep was when households conducted intimate conversations. Meaningfully, it was when couples made love. Seriously, it was when important family decisions were made. But something changed, and the change happened relatively recently in human history, within the last 200 years. Curiously, when did the shift occur? The answer is surprisingly precise. It happened with the invention of reliable artificial light. Before the light bulb and gaslight, darkness truly controlled human rhythm. When the sun set, your options became extremely limited. You could light a candle or a fire, but both were expensive and offered only dim illumination. Most people could not afford to stay awake once darkness fell. The energy cost was too high. Bed was not a punishment. It was the only rational choice. Sleep was the only activity that did not require light. So when night came, humans slept. But as artificial lighting became cheaper and more widespread throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, human behavior changed dramatically. Suddenly, you could work at night. You could be productive at night. Electric light transformed night from a period of necessary rest into a period of potential activity. And with that transformation, biphasic sleep began to disappear. The industrial age had a powerful incentive to consolidate your sleep into one 8-hour block that fit neatly into a rigid schedule. Factories operated on clocks. Offices operated on schedules. The modern world needed humans to be available for continuous blocks of time. A worker who woke up in the middle of the night, regardless of the biological reason, was a less efficient worker. And so, slowly, through cultural pressure and lighting technology and industrial scheduling, biphasic sleep was abandoned. One continuous 8-hour sleep became the new normal. And we have been living with the consequences ever since. Intriguingly, here's what's remarkable about this transformation. Your body did not consent to the change. Your brain did not evolve to prefer consolidated sleep overnight. The shift to monophasic sleep, as sleep scientists call it, was imposed on human biology by culture and technology, not demanded by your neurology. The sleep researcher William Dement, one of the founders of modern sleep science, spent decades studying sleep architecture and discovered that human sleep naturally falls into cycles. You do not simply fall asleep, drift steadily deeper into unconsciousness, then wake 8 hours later. Instead, your brain cycles through different stages of sleep roughly every 90 minutes. You move from light sleep into deep sleep, then back out into a state called REM sleep, where vivid dreams occur. This cycle is not random. It appears to be wired into your neurobiology by evolution. Here's the crucial detail. Around the 5th or 6th hour of sleep, your brain begins to transition differently. The pressure to sleep, what neurologists call sleep pressure, begins to decline. Your core body temperature starts to rise slightly. Your system naturally begins to lighten. If light were introduced, or if external conditions permitted, waking would be primed. Your brain is primed to wake around this point. This is not accidental. This appears to be deeply wired into your circadian biology. The neuroscientist Charles Czeisler at Harvard Medical School conducted a famous experiment in the 1990s that revealed something profound about biphasic sleep. He placed volunteers in darkness for 14 hours per day, mimicking the natural dark period of winter. He told them to sleep however they wanted. After a few days of adjustment, without any external cue or instruction, the volunteers spontaneously shifted into a biphasic sleep pattern. They slept for 4 hours, woke for an hour or more, then slept again. This happened naturally. Their bodies reverted to biphasic sleep without anyone telling them to do so. Czeisler's findings suggested that biphasic sleep was not a relic of the past, but a dormant capacity in modern humans, waiting to be reactivated under the right conditions. Even more revealing, the NIH researcher Thomas Ware conducted a similar experiment in the 1990s, where he kept participants in complete darkness for 16 hours every night. By the end of 2 weeks, all of the participants had spontaneously reorganized their sleep into 2 separate periods. Not one person chose consolidated sleep. Not one had to be taught the pattern. Their bodies simply found it. This consistency across all participants suggested something fundamental about human biology. What was happening during that waking period in the middle of the night? Ware's research revealed something unexpected. During the hour or two between first and second sleep, participants reported unusual mental states. Many described the feeling of clarity and calm. Some reported profound personal insights or creative breakthroughs. Many described a state of peaceful wakefulness that felt distinct from normal daytime consciousness. They did not feel tired or distressed. They felt awake but peaceful, lucid but relaxed. This state was not random. The research suggested that during the hour between sleeps, when your body was rested but your mind was not fully engaged in external activity, unique neurochemical conditions emerged. Your melatonin levels remained relatively elevated, keeping you in a state of calm alertness. Your cortisol had not yet begun to surge for the coming day. You were in a liminal state, neither fully asleep nor fully awake in the way you know wakefulness today. This may have been the ideal state for reflection, problem-solving, creative thought, and spiritual insight. The neuroscientist David Brainerd at the University of Pennsylvania has shown that light exposure, particularly blue light in the evening and at night, directly suppresses melatonin production and disrupts the circadian rhythm. In the pre-industrial world, once darkness fell, there was almost no light to suppress melatonin. Your melatonin would rise during the long hours of darkness. This sustained melatonin elevation may have been a key factor in allowing biphasic sleep to emerge naturally, and in creating the particular mental state that occurred during the waking hours between sleeps. Seriously, modern artificial light, by contrast, keeps your melatonin suppressed far later into the evening than it would be naturally. This disrupts the conditions that would allow biphasic sleep to emerge on its own. Anthropological research on contemporary hunter-gatherer societies offers more clues. The Yawanawa people of the Amazon, studied by sleep researchers in the early 2000s, do not sleep in consolidated blocks. They typically rest in multiple short periods scattered throughout the day and night, often sleeping only 2 to 4 hours at a time. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies, similarly do not exhibit consolidated sleep. They nap frequently, rest at various times of day and night, and maintain flexible sleep schedules that follow activity and social patterns rather than clock time. What is interesting is that these populations do not report sleep problems. They do not complain of insomnia or feel chronically tired. Instead, they seem to have sleep patterns that respond to their actual needs and their environment. They sleep when they are tired. They wake when they are rested. This flexibility suggests that consolidated 8-hour sleep might not be a biological imperative, but rather a cultural invention that we have now mistaken for a biological fact. The modern world has built an enormous industry around the idea that you need 8 continuous hours of sleep. Sleep clinics, sleep apps, sleep medications, all are premised on the assumption that monophasic sleep is normal and any deviation is pathological. But what if that assumption is backwards? What if consolidated sleep is the anomaly, and biphasic sleep is actually what your body wants? Consider what happens when you wake in the middle of the night in modern times. You feel anxiety. Something is wrong. You try to fall back asleep immediately. You try to fall asleep immediately. You might check the time, which makes anxiety worse. You might take a medication. You definitely do not think of this as a normal part of your biology. You think of it as insomnia. You believe something has gone wrong, and that belief itself often prevents you from falling back asleep, creating a vicious cycle of stress and sleeplessness. But imagine living in a world where waking in the middle of the night was expected and normal, where there was no anxiety attached to it, where you could simply rise, move about, think, reflect, or visit others without shame or worry. How would that change your experience? How would that change your mental health? Some researchers have speculated that the high rates of anxiety and depression in modern society might be partially related to the loss of biphasic sleep and the unique mental state that occurs during the waking hours between sleeps. In biphasic cultures, people had built-in time for reflection, for personal thought, for something that resembles meditation. This was not optional. It was built into the structure of every night. Everyone experienced it. It was culturally supported and expected. The shared nature of this experience meant that no individual felt broken or disordered when they woke in the middle of the night. It was simply what nights were like. Modern humans do not have this. Instead, you're expected to maintain constant productivity and external engagement from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep. Even your sleep is now something to optimize and track. You wear devices that monitor your sleep. You try to perfect your sleep architecture. Sleep itself has become a performance metric. This constant drive to optimize sleep often creates the very sleep disturbances that the optimization was meant to prevent. The restoration that biphasic sleep allowed was not just physical, it was psychological and spiritual. The waking hours between sleeps seem to have provided humans with something their modern biology is no longer receiving: a natural pause, a built-in reflection period, a peaceful time when the mind could wander without guilt or external demand. Consider the specific neurochemistry of those waking hours between sleeps. Your brain was flooded with melatonin, creating a sense of calm and safety. Your cortisol had not yet begun to surge for the coming day. You did not feel the subtle stress that builds toward morning. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function and self-judgment, was less active than it would be during full waking. You were in a state of lowered self-criticism and heightened intuitive awareness. This is a state where personal insights emerge. Creative breakthroughs happen here. Spiritual contemplation becomes possible here. Your ancestors had this state built into every single night. You have lost it. Some contemporary sleep researchers are now beginning to revisit the biphasic sleep question. A 2016 paper published in the journal Sleep Health suggested that biphasic sleep might not be a disorder at all, but rather a legitimate alternative sleep architecture that some people naturally prefer. The paper noted that many cultures around the world continue to incorporate napping or segmented sleep into their daily rhythm, and these populations often report subjective well-being, despite their departure from the 8-hour consolidated sleep ideal that dominates Western medicine. The authors argued that sleep medicine has been too quick to pathologize any deviation from the 8-hour monophasic model. This does not mean you should immediately abandon the attempt to sleep through the night. Your modern life does not support biphasic sleep easily. Your work schedule, your social obligations, your electric lights, and your smartphone all conspire to keep you locked into monophasic sleep. And if you try to wake up for 2 hours in the middle of the night in a modern house with constant access to stimulation, you might not experience the peaceful calm that biphasic sleepers reported. You might just be tired and frustrated. But it does mean that if you find yourself waking in the middle of the night regularly, if you lie awake for an hour or more before falling back asleep, you might not be broken. You might not have insomnia in the pathological sense. You might simply have a brain that is remembering an older, deeper pattern. A pattern that kept humans sane and rested for thousands of years. A pattern that only disappeared when we invented electric lights and industrial schedules. There is a kind of tragedy in this. Your evolutionary inheritance includes a sleep pattern that allowed for regular reflection, regular mental restoration, regular time outside the demands of work and productivity. You were built to have that time. Your ancestors relied on it. And then, in the span of 2 centuries, that time was taken away. Not because your biology changed, but because your culture did. The loss was so rapid that we have not yet adjusted psychologically to what we have given up. What would happen if you tried to reclaim some version of this, not in the traditional way because the world has moved on, but perhaps by deliberately creating space for wakefulness in the middle of your sleep, by treating it not as a disorder but as an opportunity? By using those hours for quiet reflection, for reading, for thinking about your day, for meditation or prayer, or simply sitting in the dark with your own thoughts. By cultivating something that resembles the peaceful awareness that biphasic sleepers reported. Some people are already experimenting with this. They are moving back toward biphasic sleep deliberately, not because they have insomnia, but because they recognize something valuable in the pattern. They go to bed at 9 or 10, sleep for 4 hours, wake and spend an hour or 2 in quiet activity, then sleep for another 4 hours. They report that this sleep pattern gives them more energy, more creativity, and a sense of psychological wholeness that consolidated sleep did not provide. They describe the waking hours between sleeps as a sanctuary, a time when no one makes demands, a time when they are truly alone with their own minds. You cannot sleep like your ancestors slept. Your world will not allow it. The lights are on, your phone is nearby, your schedule demands continuity. But you can recognize that when you wake in the middle of the night, something other than disorder might be happening. Your body might be remembering something true. Your brain might be attempting to reclaim a natural rhythm that served humanity well for millennia. And instead of fighting that wakefulness, you might ask yourself what it is trying to offer you. The irony of modern sleep science is that we have invested enormous resources into creating the perfect conditions for consolidated 8-hour sleep. And yet, anxiety about sleep has only increased. We have become more obsessed with sleep, more anxious about getting enough sleep, more likely to experience sleep disturbances, all while following the scientific prescription for the perfect sleep. Meanwhile, the simple biphasic sleep pattern that emerged naturally under pre-industrial conditions created none of this anxiety. People simply slept, woke, reflected, and slept again. No tracking, no optimization, no failure. Tonight, when darkness falls, you will probably lie down in your bed and expect to sleep for 8 straight hours without waking. Resigned, you will follow the modern protocol. But your ancestors would have found that expectation strange. Vivid, they would have expected to wake. They would have expected the night to be divided into distinct periods of sleep and wakefulness. Meaningful, they would have used those waking hours for reflection and thought and quiet connection. Mysterious, they would have known something that we have forgotten. Profound, they would have known that sleep is not a single monolithic block. Poetic, sleep is a rhythm. Beautiful, sleep is a conversation between rest and wakefulness. Complex, sleep is a cycle that includes periods of profound peace and periods of quiet awakening. Knowing, your body remembers this rhythm, even if your culture has tried to make you forget it. Simple, the question is not whether you should force yourself back into biphasic sleep. Direct, the question is simpler. Matter of fact, when you fall asleep tonight for 8 continuous hours without waking, you will be following a pattern that is only 200 years old. Critical, you will be sleeping like an industrial worker, not like a human. Honest, and maybe that is necessary in your modern life. Serious, but you should know what you have lost in the bargain. You should know that the wakefulness you fear in the middle of the night is not insomnia. It is a memory. Your body is remembering the watching hours. Your brain is remembering what it felt like to rest and wake, and think and rest again. Warm, you are not broken. Triumphant, you are remembering how to fall asleep like a human being once again. Gentle call to action, if this idea resonates with you, please like this video. Warm, subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the deep history of human behavior and consciousness. Encouraging, leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever experienced biphasic sleep? What was that experience like for you? Connection, your thoughts matter. Genuine, we read every comment. Warm announcement, before you go, if you enjoyed understanding the hidden truths of human sleep, you'll want to watch our next investigation, what if you're already living at the end of human history? It's a question that will change how you see the present moment. See you in the next one.